Hey, how's it going, Internet? It's Nathan from thisandthattech.com. Today we are talking about Tyranny, which is an RPG developed by Obsidian Entertainment and published by Paradox Interactive. Now, as far as the story goes, it's important to note that Tyranny is heavy in lore, but I'm going to do my best to distill it here. Tyranny asks the question, what if evil actually won? What would the aftermath look like? Now, surely there'd be people to live in a conquered world, otherwise there'd be no one to rule over. So how are things faring for them? The name of the world is Terratus, and it's ruled by the mysterious Kairos, who has conquered various kingdoms for the last 400 years. Now, because the kingdoms are so vast, Kairos uses what's known as archons to act on her behalf. An archon is an extremely powerful and, dare I say, magical human being that controls armies, assassinates troublesome power seekers, and even adjudicates or makes formal judgments on disputed matters. For that last bit, think of a judge. Previously, conquered kingdoms usually pledge fealty to Kairos and the Archons, which furthers Kairos' agenda of global conquest. Your character is what's known as a Fate Binder, which is a proxy of Kairos, and Tunin the Adjudicator, who is also an Archon judge. Your main mission is to go to the Unconquered Tears Kingdom, which is the last corner of the world free of Kairos' reign, to issue an edict that demands victory. Think of an edict basically like a proclamation of some kind. Edicts are these all-powerful spells that put a curse on the lands until a certain criteria is met. So for example, a kingdom must be taken or a bloodline completely destroyed. Otherwise, the people of that kingdom will suffer immensely. It's essentially an insurance policy to keep the archons or people in check. So with that edict, all sorts of shenanigans happen and the story's set into motion. Character creation is fundamental for personalization in these types of games, and while there isn't many faces or looks to choose from that drastically change the look of your character, there are plenty of nuanced historical background options, all of which directly impact how your Fate Binder will be treated during the game. The opening segment alone, purely optional, mind you, lets you delve deeper into the lore of Tyranny and further personalize your character's background story. So the controls and elements of Tyranny are definitely a giant monster for me to tackle. So let's talk about the battle system first. The battle system in Tyranny is something you've seen before with previous Dungeons & Dragons style RPGs. I'd liken it to Baldur's Gate, and I've also seen many comparisons online to Obsidian's Pillars of Eternity, but I can't speak on that personally. What I'm meaning here is that the dice rolls happening in the background at all times, which affects all aspects of the battle. So for example, your attacks, your spells, your various buffs, and other actions can either hit, miss, or become critical through a chance roll. Obviously, your chances for a successful action increase depending on how you allot skill points when leveling up or equipment bonuses, so there's a lot to consider here when going into battle. In fact, if you're not mindful of what is happening with these background dice rolls, you can subject yourself to a lot of difficult and short-lived battles. Thankfully, one can quickly pause the battle by pressing the spacebar to strategize and queue up actions before proceeding back into the fray, but it does require a bit of patience to get used to the learning curve if you're unfamiliar with these types of games. Also, as a bit of a side note, I didn't notice that I had the ability to queue up actions until much later in the game, and I only read that on a loading screen, so not sure if I missed that during the tutorial or what, because it seems important to simplify gameplay and makes it much more enjoyable. So I do recommend you check out how to queue it up. I believe you just hold down the shift key when you click on the different actions. And the other aspect of it is kind of in line with the story in that there's all these different dialogue options while you're playing through the game. So you can manipulate people, you can lie to them, you can try to set people against each other to work in your favor. So that element to the game is very strong because the storytelling is so good. The writers did such a phenomenal job, and even when you're not listening to voiceover work, which there is some in the game, but most of it is text-based, you still can get definitely pulled in. They did their homework, and they seemed really on top of it. They seemed passionate about it. I just felt that when I was reading the storyline and getting immersed in the world, that they just really love what they do. So the talent trees in Tyranny are somewhat limited depending on which character you're using. So for example, Barrack here, he's effectively your meat shield, so he only has Punisher and Sentinel. Then you have somebody like Verse, who's a duelist and skirmisher. I opted to put most of my points into Skirmisher for her because I wanted to keep her in the background firing fire arrows. She also has a skill called Hobbled that slows people down. And then you have somebody like Lantry who actually has 3 talent trees to choose from, so there is some variation depending on which character you have. And then when you compare it to your Fate Binder, it's not even close. Your Fate Binder has multiples here, it looks like 6. And I opted to put all my points into magic for the most part, and that seemed to be effective for me. But just keep in mind that you're probably not going to max out anything here in talents. So unless they add some more DLC or maybe some more gameplay that I'm just unaware of at this time, I just see no way to do it. In terms of magic, I really dig the spell creation system. It's all based on your lore skills. So you go down here and you see what your max lore is. And when you go up to the core sigils, you can choose different ones. So you have like fire, ice. We're going to use ice or frost in this case. And then we're going to choose an expression. And what that does is it allows you to modify the spell. So you may want to throw a spell on the floor. You may want to only have it usable very much up close and personal, or you may want to direct it towards somebody. I found that directed force works really well, and so we're going to choose that, and that will allow me to throw the frost spell at somebody in a distance. And you can also add these accents, which allows you to change the intensity, strength of it. There's an accuracy one, range, recovery, armor penetration, area of effect, select duration, select interrupt, select enhancements, and select chain. And the enhancements here, there's some interesting ones like Frostfire, which allows you to deal damage for both fire and frost. And then, of course, you have things like interrupt, which just messes up the person when you hit them and slows them down in using their abilities. So there's a lot of options here to add different accents to it. And eventually what will happen here, you'll see here that now the lore requires at 100, and then I can add this, and now I'm at 135. So I may be able to add one more accent, and that's it, because I've now used my lore, which is 145, and my total lore skill is 149. So that's effectively how the magic system works, the spell creation. I think it's good, it's fun. It definitely opens up a lot of options in the game to personalize your character. One thing I really liked about Tyranny was the equipment, because all that equipment you put on actually changed the look of your character, which it drives me crazy when games don't have that feature in it. So I was happy to see that here. It's very much in depth, by the way, with all the stats. I mean, every single piece of equipment has its positives and its negatives. So you have to weigh all that out depending on how you decided to make your character. For example, you could make your character to be one-handed swordsman, two-handed. They could carry magic staffs. I mean, the possibilities are endless here, so you have to really plan things out. So again, that may be a problem for some people because there's so much into it, but I would highly suggest, if you're one of those people that feels like, I don't want to take all the time to set this up, to just go with something and forget about the rest, because there's still a lot of good gameplay here, and I'd hate for you to get caught in the minutia of, I don't know what points I want to spend on where, etc. So just pick something and go with it. Graphically speaking, I actually love the aesthetics of Tyranny. The game doesn't require much to run it. I think it's like a 560 GPU or something like that. But the isometric look to it all I still dig it. Even after all these years, it gives me a little bit of nostalgia. It's gorgeous how they set up everything. Very pretty colors when you cast spells, when you see things in the background, these old buildings. So there's a lot to it there graphically. I will say, though, the characters don't look that good. They look a little muddy, but it's because you're never really zoomed in on them that much. But you kind of don't want to be, because you want to see the whole level itself, the area or whatever. When you're in a battle, you're not going to be that zoomed in. So that part's a little of a catch-22. I would like to see a few more animations, though. There were some instances where, let's say, a character gets killed right in front of you, like from a decision tree type decision, if you will. And they just fall to the ground after you read the text. Nothing really happens. Nobody runs up to them. There's no interaction there. So that kind of pulls you out of the experience a bit. But again, despite its limitations, I think graphically it's a very beautiful game.
That's 4 reports of avalanches in the mountains now. The Tearsmen can barely count past 9. They have neither the capacity nor the cause to close off the mountain passes. Either way, that leaves the second and fourth cohort trapped outside the valley.
Or it's the work of your perfidious Earthshakers. Only a fool would not suspect a traitorous Archon of poisoning the mind of his students with sedition. We would have killed the Earthshakers Guild for their master's treachery, but I'm sure you have some perfectly valid reason for allowing them to live as your pawns.
In terms of sound, Tyranny knocked it out of the park. I think there's some great ominous background music that drives the whole storyline. I think the sounds for battle, for the most part, were good, especially with the big magical spells and things like that. Most of the voiceover is absolutely exquisite, except for one character, and that is Kills in Shadow, which is the werewolf-looking thing.
Know this scent. Stench of blood, sweat,
And
battle.
my God, is that
I
character
am
annoying.
death.
So that would be my one
Smells
complaint.
like alpha.
But
Smells of
all in
strength.
all, good sound, engrosses you in the game, and that's really all you wanted to do. Now, pacing is a difficult thing for me in Tyranny because Acts 1 and 2 are so strong. They're so well written, which massive props to the writers. I think they are on another level throughout this game. But where the game starts to fall apart for me is in Act 3. And that's because Acts 1 and 2 are so long, so drawn out. The scale's so epic that you're expecting more of the same for Act 3. Because by the time you get to Act 3, for example, you think, oh, I must have tons of hours still to put into this game, and that's just not the case. The game kind of wraps up abruptly, and I'm going to keep it spoiler free, but it's just, it takes something away from it. I think I was just expecting more at the end there. I actually posed the question on Reddit to a lot of people about the ending to see what they thought, and I got a lot of mixed views on it, mixed views I should say, and some people felt that it was just fine the way the story was told. Other people wanted more, but it seemed like a lot of the consensus was that Act 3 did have some type of problems. Like all of a sudden the gameplay changed a bit in terms of like how quick it went, and I can't help but think perhaps there was a deadline. I'd be curious to talk to some of the developers about what was going on there, because it just seemed like they left a little bit on the table. But then again, maybe they're looking to make some DLC or a sequel, perhaps, because there seems to be a lot more stories to tell in the world of Tyranny. Now, while I'm thinking about other potential pitfalls for new players, the opening character creation and the background story that you pick there can take a long time. In fact, it can take like 20 to 30 minutes. So that may be a deterrent to some. You can skip all that. I would recommend maybe going through some of the storyline and picking some different background options, because it does affect how people react to you in the real world. I actually did like doing the background story, but I could see why it'd be problematic for some people. So just something I'd want to note. It's optional if you want to do it or not, but it does engage you more into the lore of Tyranny. So the big question, really the only one that matters, is the game fun? And I would say yes, unequivocally, this game is fun to play, but you have to like this certain type of genre, this Dungeons and Dragons, roll of the dice, let's plan and strategize every single battle, pause it. Now, some people may not be into that, but I do believe if you give it a chance, if you look into the lore and really immerse yourself in it, kind of like you're reading a good book but also playing a game at the same time, I think you'll get more out of it and enjoy it a lot more than the average person that is just rushing through, not reading most of the dialogue options, things of that nature. So I think you should give it a go. If you're on the fence on it, maybe wait till it drops to $20 or something like that. But at $44, there's still a lot of gameplay here. And even on multiple playthroughs, there's supposedly different characters to acquire, and so that should keep you coming back for more. Thanks for watching my video today. If you could go down below and hit the like or dislike button, that helps me know what to do in the future. And also, my social media is down below if you'd like to come hang out with me a little bit more. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one.